what inspired the shift to go to employee ownership?
There are companies that every year they're cutting people in order to make the numbers. I think you start with the people and then the numbers will follow.
What about the presence portion? Why is that important, and how's that served you?
I think you want to live your life to its fullest. If you're always thinking about tomorrow or you're thinking about yesterday, you're not living today. In 2014, I lost one of my sisters to cancer. And, she lived a great life and she was an inspiration, how she lived and actually how she fought cancer for like 11 years. I have this kind of personal credo that I had developed when I was at a leadership seminar back in 2012. And it was this. It's savor the day while always learning for a better tomorrow. And I think within that, I was just what I try to do and what I would encourage others to consider is whatever is going on, to really savor where you are and what you're doing. I'm not to be fatalistic, but life is short. And I think we just need to appreciate wherever we are, whatever we're doing. So that's savoring the time, being engaged where you are, not thinking about what happened or what will be, but just being engaged in the present, and then being just curious and looking and trying to find a better way by just learning. And then I am optimistic. I try not to have rose-colored glasses, but just being optimistic. And so, to me, I think throughout this is something that I've tried to do. It's not perfect. I'm not there all the time. There are times when I'm not excited about where I am at the moment or whatever, but and there are times when I'm not totally open and being curious, but I try to push myself to really savor the day while always learning for a better tomorrow. And I would just say through a lot that we'll be talking about, that was kind of the lens of which I was trying to do things. So maybe for people just to think of, is that something that might fit for them or work for them?
I love that. I'd like to get more into that. Actually, I do have an immediate follow-up question to that. How long have you been operating under that credo?
It was 2012 when I created that. And it was at this leadership seminar that I went to. And it was really powerful, but it just really made me, spend some time thinking about what drove me. So I would say that's when I'd captured it. I never really thought about it. But I think I'd really lived that way for a while, just really trying to. So I don't know when it happened, but that's when I crystallized
Okay.
it.
Okay.
And just, I think it also was, again, for somebody who's wanting to lead or wanting to grow, it was just this, I think there's elements about being present when we're with other people, being open and curious about them to be also positive, when you're not positive. And again, I'm trying to differentiate, not like deceiving yourself and having rose-colored glasses and not seeing what's there, because you need to see what's there. But within it, to be like, we can overcome this, to be positive, because I don't know about you, I don't like to be around negative people. It's like and so when people are negative, I think it's very difficult for them to lead, or they wonder why they can't get that role. And it's like, well, that's not the way to get there in my mind. It's
Yeah.
just my opinion.
No, I appreciate it. That's the whole reason you're on the show, is to share your opinion. And this is an important one, right? Because it's one I've thought about a lot, because I've been around quite a few leaders and people in positions of power, if that's how you want to call it, and in all ends of the spectrum, right? Those who are hyper pessimistic, those who are hyper realistic, and those who are hyper optimistic. And it's really interesting to see the dynamic that's built around them in each one of these, different types. But I really like what you're saying, because you're saying there's a balance somewhere between optimism and realism that can make for an incredible leadership style. Is that right?
Yeah. And I just think, like being optimistic, I think is also compatible with understanding the realities that you're facing.
Yeah.
It's also compatible with radical accountability.
Yeah.
Like I am taking this responsibility for this, and to me, that's not in the way of being positive about our abilities to overcome, our abilities to kind of have some stability when, whether it's the pandemic or whether, there's so much noise in the world. And I think from leading to be able to be like, what is the role of a leader oftentimes? And again, I don't think it's rose colored glasses, but I think it is providing some stability, some, a place of outside the storm. Like when we were in the pandemic, it was like there was lots of reasons to, be concerned. People were concerned about the future. And what's ironic is when there's a threat like that and you're concerned about the future, then people want to know what the future is. And then you're like, well, we never knew what the future
Right.
is. But, to be able to but to put it in context. And again, I think having this a longer view to be able to say like, hey, this is not going to last forever. Like,
Hmm.
oh, our customers and our world will thrive again. I'm not sure when, but it's providing that. So I've kind of went off into a path, but I would say there is a nuance to this of being positive doesn't mean rose colored glasses. Being positive doesn't mean you don't see what is happening and dealing with that. Positive is not about accountability or not being radically accountable. And I think that's another element that people need to embrace being a leader and is accountability. And so all those things, but so often in our world when people are learning and whatever, it's kind of like, oh, it's this or that, or
Yeah.
one or the other. And this is where I'd say, it's just something that is a key element to me in being uh, a positive and a force to rally us together to keep going when mostly you might have a 90 reasons to be paralyzed into not doing anything. And then just kind of like, well, here are the 10 why we're going to move,
Yeah.
whatever the times are going to be. Because no matter what's happening, there's business to be had. I mean, even now,
Yeah.
people can talk about the tariffs and they can talk about all sorts of issues that are just like, what are we going to do? And it's like, well, I think we're going to keep moving.
Yeah.
Like if you
Yeah.
think about it right now, we're over halfway through the year. Can you even believe it?
No, I don't think anybody can.
And everybody's talking, has been talking about how the world's ending. And it's like, well, by the way, it just progressed 6 months while we were all, and a lot of business happened. And so, do you want to be stuck,
Yeah.
or do you want to figure out, like, I don't know the answers to all this, but let's keep moving?
I love that. I love that take. I really appreciate you kind of walking me through that. I'll ask one more question on the credo aspect, and then I'm going to ask you how it kind of transpires into the culture you've created. But you talked about the positivity, which I think is an incredible take on that. What about the presence portion? Why is that important, and how's that served you?
Well, I think it's just important because I think you want to live your life to its fullest. And if you're always thinking about tomorrow or you're thinking about yesterday, you're not living today. And not to be, again, fatalistic, but it's kind of like, I believe life is short. I can't believe how old I am. I never thought, I don't feel any different, but like it's gone on. But I
Yeah.
was in 2014. Um, I lost one of my sisters to cancer, and she lived a great life, and she was an inspiration. How she lived, and actually how she fought cancer for like 11 years. And But we all have different, I think, examples of where you see life is precious. And to me, it's hard if you always are living in a time that's different than right now. And like right now, um, this is great to be able to talk to you. And I love
Yeah.
just kind of sharing and doing this, and to be here, and not to be thinking about, oh, here's what I'm doing tonight or tomorrow. I'm golfing Saturday. Let me think about my golf game. So to me, the presence is just to me, a way in which you're trying to really uh, live your fullest. And that's just how I think about it.
No, I love that. I appreciate the explanation there. So then the second part to that, obviously this is something that you've been living by for quite a while. I imagine that it bleeds through you and through your leadership onto your and into your team. So help me understand then how maybe you transferred some of this into the culture of the company over the years.
Um, and and I would also just kind of add, Josh, within this. This is to me, it's my ongoing aspirational. I don't want to act like I'm a monk or
No, sure.
the Dalai Lama in doing this. This is just kind of like I'm just trying every day and trying to capture this. I'm not speaking in a self-righteous way. Uh, I would say how I have incorporated this is that for me, I've learned a lot over the years. And one mentor of mine is Steve Cobb, who owned 100% of Henny Penny, and who was a second generation owner and was created this enormous gift of the ESOP. And he and I spent a lot of time just talking about things, and he helped me see a long view, because I'd worked for a number of different companies, including private uh, private equity, public companies. Those were elements that I did not learn a long view in that world, and so a lot of my you know how I've learned and grown. And I would also say this: I feel sorry for people that I managed in the beginning. I feel sorry for I probably made I would say I probably made every idiotic decision you could make. But here's what I tried to do every time is just learn and get better.
Yeah.
And so anyway, the where I believe strongly and I feel fortunate to be able to have is this long view, valuing relationships. Um, and that was the model we have right now with this employee owned. I have the luxury of a long view. We don't have to look quarter to quarter. Now, I am a big capitalist. I'm a supporter of all different, structures in capitalism, from a public company to private equity to a family business to a founder business, and any of them are all. We've got a unique model in the ESOP in that, but and I am so happy that I am in this world and how I am able to impact people. Um, and I would say, like the public companies, they're good public companies and they impact people and do lots of things. But I would say, like as an example, if it was a game, like they're playing rugby, and I'm getting to play golf. Now, if I'm at a public company, you better be playing rugby, or you're not going to be there. If I try to go play golf there, I'm not going to be there. So you need to understand the structure and guardrails. And so a public company or even private equity might have a very short window of which you need to have, and
Hmm.
it's like you just better know that game. And so if somebody's looking at me and saying, well, I don't have the luxury of a long view, I see why that's nice. I'm like, I understand. I view it this way. If we used an analogy in the real estate business, it's like, um, I think a lot of people are learning their business skills as house flippers. And I don't mean a house flipper in a derogatory term. I'm just saying that's where a lot of businesses today, they're optimizing. And,
Yeah.
and so if you were a house flipper, you wouldn't put a 50-year roof on. It would make no sense. And I wouldn't even advise that. But what we're trying to do is we're building a cathedral. And so we're trying to help people see, like in our world, we care about our suppliers being healthy. I don't, you can make a company look pretty good in a couple years. You can cut a lot of things that
Hmm.
we invest heavily in because we want to be here 10 years from now, 30 years from now. So we want to have healthy suppliers. We want to train and develop our people. We want to have great facilities to be able to do the work. Now, but if I wanted to dress the company up to look extremely profitable, to sell it and cut expenses, over the next 24 months, you could cut a lot of stuff out. And if
Yeah.
that was your goal, then that's what you're going to go do, much like that. So there's my only reason for kind of going off on this tangent is there are some people that are playing a game where it'll be hard to implement some of the things I'm talking about because they have different confines. What I
Hmm.
would say is I'm a big believer of people regardless. And if you're at a place where people are the way in which they manage the business, personally, I wouldn't stay there. Like there are companies that every year they're cutting people in order to make the numbers. I think you start with the people and then the numbers will follow. And I think you can do that anywhere and have a respect for people, regardless of the game you're playing. Um, you might have to deal with it in different ways. And in the same way with us, I mean, even having a long view, if we were fundamentally, a different company because of our business, we haven't had a layoff in 68 years. We wouldn't go out of business on principle. I mean, we'd have to rescale the company. If we lost half our business or something, it would be a long, we would we would do what we have to. Now, hopefully, in any case, um, if we do, it would be with as much, as generous and respectful as possible in kind of doing that. So, as you see, Josh, I go all over the place on.
No, this is great, Rob. Honestly, because it helps me understand and internalize exactly what it is that you're saying, especially when you give so many examples around it. So, no, I truly appreciate that. So then that kind of answers my question, which was going to be what inspired the shift to go to employee ownership. And I do want to mention, you said a couple of times ESOP. For everybody out there that doesn't know what an ESOP is, can you just
Yeah.
quickly explain it?
Yeah, so the ESOP is this. It is a retirement plan. It's like your 401k. It was created by Congress to incent employee ownership, and so um, without we could spend a lot of time on the ESOP
Yeah.
itself, but the fundamental of it is, and it's a very powerful part, but it's not the only part of being employee owned. But what happens is um, Steve Cobb sold all the shares to a trust, and that trust was backed by Henny. and then he was paid for that. There's a, how his transaction was, and we don't need to go into
No, we
details,
don't need
but
to get
he
into
was
it.
paid for that. And then every year, the trust allocates to all the employees um, um, these shares. Now, the only thing, and again, I'm not going to go too deep into this because it just kind of gets mind bending, but those shares are an economic interest. They are really real economic value, but they're not shares of like control. They don't,
Right.
they're not like, okay, now they can all gather their shares and then say, okay, we want to do something different here or whatever. They're this economic value. But the beauty of this is everyone in the company, or in our case, you've got to be a US taxpayer because
Mm,
it's part
sure.
of, it's like, a 401k. How does that work? You got to be a US taxpayer. It's part of our tax system. So
Yeah.
every year, everybody gets allocated shares and we revalue the company. And that is in this account. And so we just finished our 10th year. And there is, if you add up the statements of all the employees, the value in that is over $100 million of, and that would be, roughly like what does that mean? It's probably, if somebody was making $60,000, they probably have $150,000 in this account if they've been here the whole time. And they've contributed nothing to it.
Yeah.
And and it's a retirement account, and it's much like your 401k. Like if you leave a company, you'd be paid out, and then you could roll it into an IRA or pay the penalties, all identical to a 401k. And so that
Sure.
is this um, regulated kind of pension. Now, for us, we actually kept the 401k and we contribute to that and these other things, but that is the ESOP, and that
Yep.
allows us because most people in the world do not participate in the equity value of a company. That's usually for the owners, the investors, whatever, the senior leadership. And this is where everybody gets to participate.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's a key element, but it's really not the only thing. The way in which we run the company is, again, we have a company kind of like profit sharing that's done every year. So we have a company performance bonus, we call it, and that is more substantial because we're employee owned. So there are a lot of other elements of being employee owned and how we run the business. But the ESOP is this particularly, and it's very valuable element of this retirement plan.
All right. So then how, in your view, did that change the mindset of the employees and even the leadership within Henny Penny?
Well, it takes a while because I think we were a good company that took care of people and people did a great job and longtime employees and impacted generations of families. So when we became an ESOP, the day before, Steve Cobb was chairman and I was CEO, and Art Harlan was the CFO. The day after, Steve Cobb was the chairman. I was the CEO. Art was the CFO. We ran the company pretty much the same. There was not, and so even though it was different, it took a while for us all, because it felt pretty much the same.
Yeah.
Um, and the same was not bad. I would say what this has done is it's kind of accelerated this long view, valuing the relationship and our ability to impact our people because there's no resources going to anybody else. There are no resources going to a family or investors or whatever. So
Mhm.
so but practically, like when you're sitting there saying like, does how have people changed? Well, they typically say after five or so years, there becomes enough in the account where people start like, well, what is this again? How's this happening?
Mm.
You know, or their spouse are asking, like, what is this? And then they're getting more into this shift of, you know, it's not just I'm getting paid, but I'm getting a benefit. And how do I impact that benefit? Which then starts getting into kind of this responsibility that we have to each other, you
Mm.
know. And if you're kind of slacking off, and maybe before, I don't know, maybe you would have waited for it's not my job, I'll wait for the manager, and maybe he doesn't do anything or does, but it's not me, whatever. Now I think for many it starts to get to a place where that's not all right, because we're you're holding us back. And so I think over time there becomes more ownership of
Mm.
the feeling like I can impact this, and I need to, and we all need to be pulling our weight, not when you're just at a company sometimes and people get the sense of like, well, I'm getting paid, that's not my job to worry about that, because I don't really have any connection. Like they do have a connection to the company does poorly, they might lose their job, but there is not a direct line as much as now they start seeing this truth that is the better we do, the better we all do.
Yeah.
Um, so, and it just takes a while as far as, and I think we're still on that journey. I think there's still people that probably feel like it's almost still always has it been, and
Mm.
I'm working and getting this, and
Yeah.
I don't mean that in a negative way. It's a big mindset shift.
Yeah. No, totally understand, and I appreciate that transparent, opinion and view on that. Ownership, and the reason I ask is because ownership among the team, especially in small business, can become a topic of conversation, right? And one that I hear from founders and owners, a lot, and they say, well, how do I get my team to really take ownership, to feel like they're an owner in the business? And an ESOP is an incredible way to do that because you're literally giving them some of the company, and they feel tied to that. But if I were to ask you, Rob, if any company out there didn't have an ESOP and really wanted to inspire ownership among the team and their employees and get them to act that way about the business, how would you recommend they do that?
Well, I think to me, the way is, how do you make it real for whoever it is, your employees or whatever, to feel like if I do better and help the company do better, that I can see a real benefit from that. Versus, I mean, if you put somebody and there is um, no tie of an incentive or something that would say, if you'd say, well, I want you to treat this like your own money, and I want you to act like this is yours. Then there's part of this where it's like, well, that's easy for you to say, because the better we do, the better you do.
Right.
So I'm not saying you have to then give somebody equity, but I would say there probably needs to be a connection between, well, if you're saying, I want you to act like it's your own, then I would say you probably need to connect that with something that would be real and tangible, or don't say it.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
me, it's like pretty hollow if you say it, but then they just get this, they get their hourly wage or whatever. And it's kind of like, well, there's nothing real behind what you're saying, which leads me. So again, I'm not saying you need to say it, but if somebody wants to say, I want to have people act like it's their own, then it'd be like, well, what would you put in place that would make them have some benefit for the actions you want? And I bring this up because this is probably also something that I would say is a big takeaway that I would like people to think about. And that is, if you're going to say something, then do it. You don't have to say it. But, the problem to me is the words are so cheap these days. And, Josh, if you took, how many number of CEOs and you took all their words and put it in a word machine, 90% of CEOs say the same stuff. and it's what's the latest thing too? It evolves, like, oh, we're transparent, we're, whatever.
Mission
Um,
driven.
you know, and so here's the reality, and it drives me crazy. There's some that are just say it because they know it's smart to say, but they
Sure.
don't do anything about it. They say it, and then the worst are the ones that say stuff and do the opposite. What I would say is, if you're saying you're going to do something, then what are you doing about it? We can talk at some point about, like, we believe we've got a kind of our approach to how we impact people, and it has to do with creating a best place to work, a thriving company, and supporting people on their well-being and our ownership. Now, like when I talk about well-being, and a lot of people talk about well-being, all those things, I can show you directly what we're doing to that and put actions behind words. Too many people say stuff and either don't do anything about it or do the opposite. And then they wonder why people are cynical. And so to me, I'm not saying you've got to tell people you believe in their well-being. But if you're going to say you believe in supporting their well-being, then I would say, what are you putting behind that? What are your actions? And I think how we should be judged more is on our actions versus our words.
I love that. So now that you've told me that wellness is important to you, what are you doing about that?
Yeah, we're doing nothing. No. So, so in it'll be 6 years ago, I hired a director of well-being, and
Really?
that was like, at the time, that was, and it was really kind of, the reaction. The company was kind of like, "What is that?" Um,
What
and
are we spending our stock shares on now?
what is this? But it was what I was looking to do is to say, how can we be more strategic about how we're impacting people's well-being? And really, what I was hoping we could do is not only because I think it's the right thing to do to help people on their well-being journey to be as healthy as they can be, but and it wasn't just to reduce our healthcare costs. It was really just, I thought, a way to help people avoid misery if they can, and also to be better coworkers and to help people and bring awareness and services to people that maybe had not had access to it. So,
Mm.
here's one of the things I had observed over the years, and it just kind of struck me. It was like, we do everything the insurance brokers would say to do. On their health care, like every year, there'd be like, this year they'd come in and it's like, oh, we're going to have a walking contest, and we're
Hmm.
going to give everybody pedometers, and they'll have teams and we'll have prizes and it'll be great, and what I observed is, mostly, not always, but mostly the people participating were the ones already active. They were coming
Yeah.
in and saying, can I run? Can I win more than once? And the person who's on the sidelines on their 15th Mountain Dew of the day is not.
Right.
And so it just made me think about, how can we try to be more strategic, and how can we think more deeply about, can we actually move the needle on these? So I hired this woman who's great. She had been involved with corporate well-being, and So we just talked a lot about the vision of well-being and looking at physical health, mental health, financial health, social health, just all elements. And one of the first things we tackled was the physical health. And in doing some of the looking at the data of our employees, we saw that there was a big percentage, especially of our hourly employees, that were not connected to the healthcare system. They just, if they had something bad happen, they'd go to the emergency room.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And otherwise, there was not an ongoing relationship to try to proactively manage your health, or just,
Sure.
just like, I don't have that. I don't want that. I don't trust that. So we were working with the two big healthcare systems in the community, and approached one, and they said they'd never done that at a manufacturing facility because we wanted to have an on-site clinic. And but they said we're all in, and we started planning that end of 19 and into 20. We were looking to have a clinic on site in 21. The pandemic happened in March, and we called the healthcare system and said, "Could you send over the nurse practitioner for us now?" And so she came, and she just walked around production and was there in support. And then in September of 2020, we opened up uh, our clinic, and then in November of 23, we tripled the size of the clinic. We added a fitness center with locker rooms and 24-hour equipment. This is great equipment, not like equipment you might find in a hotel or something. This is top notch, because one of the big things they say is, if you could do one thing, not that you can do one thing, it'd be like move. And we wanted to provide this
Yeah.
access 24 hours a day, 365 days a year for any of our employees. We have 3 shifts that could use that. We have the clinic. Any of our, and we've got on campus a little under 1,000 people at our headquarters. Probably 600 or so, 500 or so are hourly production employees, and the rest are all the different functions you need to run a business, from IT and finance and marketing and engineering and whatever. All of our employees can on site see a nurse practitioner or a mental health therapist on the clock for free. Um, so by looking to see for the physical health, we added the clinic. Also for physical health, added the fitness center. We also have financial counselors that come in that you can make appointments to see on for retirement planning or just day-to-day budgeting. If you're in a cycle of living check to check, the reality of check to check, unfortunately, is for most, if you get a raise, you know what happens? You're still check to check. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
because it's generally more of an outflow than an inflow.
Sure.
And it's a tough cycle. So we added financial counseling. We also believe strongly in giving back and feeling fortunate. If you feel fortunate, you can do a lot. If you feel like you're screwed or a victim, it's hard.
Yep.
So one of the things in 2017, we started the Henny Penny Employee Foundation. And that was where the employees raise the money, and then the employees get the opportunity to give out that for people that come and request money. And when you see that, you see how fortunate you are when you start seeing all the need and why and whatever. And we think that's a part of your well-being, being able to feel fortunate and to give back. And most anybody who's gotten involved with philanthropy or volunteering quickly learns that you get way more back than when giving. And so that's an element of kind of what we call the social element of your well-being. And so I would just say we're attacking each one, and we're still trying to move the needle within that. But I would say those are the different elements of how we're trying to help people on their well-being journey. And yeah.
That's really interesting. It actually reminds me of a book I just read not long ago by Sahil Bloom, The Five Types of Wealth. I don't know if you've read that one or not, but this he talks about these different areas of wealth. You've got your social wealth, you've got your time wealth, you've got your financial wealth, you've got your uh, uh, there's a couple others. There's five total, but it kind of, the way that you're describing these areas of wellness just reminds me of kind of how he describes these areas of wealth. I think it's incredible that you were able to ingrain that into the culture of the organization. So I guess my follow-up question to that is, what have you noticed, if anything, that has done for retention, productivity, stuff like that?
It's it's interesting because I would say we definitely it's hard to track some of this. We definitely, I
Hmm.
mean, we have turnover. We think we have less turnover as far as we peer uh, peer benchmark. But I would say, and we also know, we hear anecdotally a lot when people come, they want to come to Henny Penny because they've heard about the employee owned. And when they hear about the employee owned, it's kind of wrapping up all of these things together. And it's kind of like, not only, gosh, they've got a clinic, they've got this exercise room, we've got a beautiful campus we're in the middle of the cornfields in Ohio. And we're on 75 acres, and one of the things we do too is in having a best place to work, we're trying to, again, we're not perfect, but we're striving to have a best place to work and grow. Because if you can, and what does that encompass? Well, part of it's like having great facilities to be able to do your work, that you feel like you've got the tools and the ability to do work. And so within it, we invest in our facilities, and we try to work with managers to support you and to be able to, if you feel valued and appreciated, if you feel like you're making a difference and it's a purposeful work, and if you feel like you're growing, you know those are all combinations that have people kind of say like, hey, I want to learn more about Henny. And then they see these things like the clinic. They see things like um, uh, the fitness center. And then they learn more about, oh, this is very cool on this, these benefits we have or whatever. I would say it's such a, it's all of these different elements together. It's kind of hard to pull on like, well, here would be a classic case that I can't answer. When I get it, and it's a valid question by other CEOs, it'd be like, well, what's your return on the clinic? And I would say, I don't know. I don't know. And it'd be like, well, that's crazy. I mean, I can look at it, but it was not, we didn't have if you want a business case, you're going to be hard pressed to do this. And a lot of people are not comfortable, with that. And to me, it's like, well, am I cavalier with resources and money and whatever? Is it? But I think they're just elements where I think the payback for that it's the right thing to do. We can do it. We can impact people, and we've even started seeing that with people that had discovered they had cancer and different stuff. It's like it's and over time. So here's the challenge with the payback immediately is these are really long-term things. I mean, we've got a population and we've got a lot of long-term employees that are
Mhm.
nearing retirement age and whatever, and some have not been the healthiest. So it's not like the clinic is going to change those fundamentals, but we think it will also help people. And to me, one of the biggest areas of potential impact are people probably between 30 and 50
Yeah.
who are, maybe doing stuff that they don't see yet that's impacting their body. And so they haven't really put on a lot of the weight or affected their, but if they started looking at their biometrics, they could see what's happening. And then, we're not trying to be this big brother and make you, but
Sure.
maybe through awareness and information, people might say, I choose to want to impact that so I don't end up with that kind of thing. Now, at the end, it doesn't take care of all things. I mean, people can get cancer for,
Sure.
whatever, but there are a lot of health issues that we can have an impact on if we choose to. And so to me, it's offering this ability to have information, awareness, connectivity to be able to do that. So, um, can you show a payback in a couple years? No, I can't. And it's because of those dynamics. But I believe strongly it's not only the right thing to do, I think it's the best thing to do. And I think we also will over time attract different people that will want
Yeah.
want to use and feel that.
I love that answer. So I guess I'd like to try to tie this back to something smaller. If we were
Yeah.
talking to organizations that didn't have the resources that Henny Penny does to bring in, wellness directors and open clinics and
Yep.
have facilities, how would you advise an owner, CEO of a company maybe between 50 and 100 employees on how they could focus on wellness for their people?
Um, this may sound trite or silly. I think it I think it begins with, and I don't think you have to do all these different things. I think it begins with a core care. Do you care? And so do you're, if you're 50 or 100 people and you have, a manager or whatever, or there, whoever is interacting with employees, um, is there, they care? Are they noticing? Are they checking kind of like without sounding too, like checking their energy? A lot of times, like if you and I checked in, you don't have to be high energy all the time, but if I know you, and I'm really looking for it and saying, how you doing? And, to kind of see like, is there something off? Is there something, and not trying to pry, but just trying to care to then say, hey, can you connect, like maybe you can connect them with
Yeah.
somebody. Maybe you can kind of see what's the core of what's happening and what are resources that might be able to. So, but I think at a core element, it just begins with that you're caring about your people and you're noticing. And you're now within it, it's not trying to pry. It's just trying to demonstrate care and support. And if they choose to, because it's the same thing that we have a clinic. I'm not making people go to the clinic or the fitness room.
Sure.
So in the end, it's up to them if they choose not to, tell you. But I'm just saying, if you really care, you can. If anybody really cares, they can probably start noticing and trying to be there to support their whole self. To me, I'm like, I think it's I want people to be their best outside of Henny Penny. I don't want to be a company where they're working and you're working the 18 hours and we just burn you out and then we go hire somebody else. I want people to enjoy their life. I want people to be able to be at important things for their kids. I want to be able to have them because I want to do that. I don't want them to, go through their whole life and it's like, I missed my kids growing up. I did this. There's this. So I want to support them in their life outside of Henny Penny. And so within it, it becomes again this conversation of to me about care. And then if something happens, whether it's like, hey, I might be able to connect them to somebody who, hey, if you need some help on this or that, or where we can do it. So I think it no matter where you start or whatever resources you have, probably goes a long way if it's real of care. Um,
I like that. Yeah, I like that a lot. I appreciate you sharing that. I've got one more section on business, and then I'd like to get into a little bit of the personal side, if you
Sure.
don't mind.
Sure.
All right, you still good on time?
Yep.
All right, cool. So I want to talk a little bit about succession and mentorship behind that, and kind of how that intertwines. Uh, so I'm really curious if there was, or what was the hardest part of stepping back into executive chairman and letting go of that CEO role. What
Yeah.
did that look like?
Um, it was, I've been thinking about it for a while and been working on it for a while. And um, I was really, um, felt a pressure to find a successor. So, and then uh, finding really an incredible guy in Kevin Buckler has made it much easier. And I would say part of my, um, I've he's been on board a little over a year, and I went to this executive chairman role, which is kind of not a very common, and it was really kind of saying I'm still on the business side for a bit, and it was
Hmm.
just really being able to. I was going to put together a smooth transition, and so um, Kevin was outside of our industry, so I've been taking him around to customers and peers in the business and in the community. So I've been in the last year, I've been doing a lot in just getting him up to speed and supporting him while moving out of the day to day and trying not to create a shadow or in his ability to lead. So just kind of working through that. But I think what's helped me let go, although maybe people would say I haven't yet, is I have a lot that I'm doing. I am on Dayton Children's Hospital board. I'm on Sinclair Community College boards. I'm on a couple of business boards, and I'm also really focused on what I call Henny Penny to Infinity, which is really what I'll be spending a lot of time as I transition to just chair uh, and be totally outside of the business per se. And that's where I'm looking to say, today it would be unthinkable for us to sell Henny Penny. Like Steve Cobb is still on the board, and he'd be like, "Are you kidding me? I could have done that." And so it's unthinkable. What I'm
Yeah.
trying to think through is like, well, if it's 50 years from now and nobody around the table is there, is it still unthinkable? And I would
Mm.
say most companies and most boards and most people would say, well, if the price is good enough, we need to sell. And our dream is this. It's never sold. Because somebody might have a dream of like, oh, I'd like to create 1,000 millionaires or something. And but this dream is we want to be here for generations. Because if you sell, it's over. It's over. And so we want to make sure that Henny Penny continues on in the way Henny Penny is, with a long view, valued relationships, and is a trusted partner because of this long view and what we're doing. That it's uh, that it's here forever. And so then you're kind of looking to say, and I've been spending a lot of time, which we don't have to get into, on like, why do companies endure and why do they fail?
Sure.
And so that gets me into like, well, performance, succession, greed are usually one of those three end up causing a company to no longer be here or be part of something else. So
Mm.
that's a long way of getting around to. I've got a lot on my plate that energizes and excites me. And so while I care deeply about Henny Penny, I'm still connected in a way that's probably different than if I was just kind of like riding off in the sunset and had,
Okay.
like I have no connection.
So then how do you help guide or mentor Kevin if you need to without actually overshadowing what he's doing with the business?
Yeah, well, I could probably use some counseling. That's the trick. That's
Yeah.
the trick I'm working through.
Yeah.
And I'd say Kevin and I have a great relationship, and I'm checking in all the time because I want
Mhm.
to. You can you can do it without knowing it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you've probably seen. I've seen lots of examples where somebody's really just not letting go, or they think they let go, but they're doing things that undermine that,
Yeah.
and they're not even
Yeah.
seeing it. And so I try to work hard on self awareness. I see when I see over the last year when I was like, I shouldn't have done that. And I'm just kind of like, talk to Kevin about it and say like, okay, and he knows the what I'm trying to walk. I'm trying to
Okay.
be there to support him, to help him with the culture, to help him. I'm also trying to help him to see the chessboard. I'm not trying to suggest the moves, but I have a lot of experience in the market. I know a lot of people. I know our customers. I know our products. I see things that are happening in our industry. And so trying to help him see that to provide that again, to not make him take a move just to see the board.
Yeah. That makes sense. That's I appreciate that thorough explanation and the transparency in that because it is a juggle, it is a balance, and I have seen it, you know, in close to my own business and to people that I know as well. Even if they're well intended, to your
Yep.
point, right?
Yep.
Absolutely. All right, great. Well, that's some incredible insight on the business side of things. I really want to thank you for that aspect of it. And I know we kind of touched on some personal philosophies and stuff there, but I want to dig a little deeper into that side of it now,
Sure.
because it is a balance, and that's part of what this show is about. So, I guess my first question on that side of things is in regard to leadership, so kind of transforming from business to personal. But how has your view of leadership changed since you started or since you uh, became in a position to lead?
I think I don't know, it's just continued to evolve. And so I think it starts with you've got to be in a good place to lead. Like
Hmm.
you have to be in balance. You have to, and I'd start with this. I think family is first. Um, I think, and this is oftentimes, again, it's cliched. It can kind of be misunderstood. It's kind of like my belief in the company is, as an example, this would be a classic kind of take would be, some companies talk about like number one is the customer, and I would say, number one are your people, and I will tell you know large customers when they come in, and I know it sounds corny. It's like um, I believe our people are number one, and that if we take good care of them, support them, provide them the tools and the support they need, they will take care of you much better than if I say you're number one. And so it starts with this element of this belief in people first, and that people, the numbers will follow, versus a lot of people are start with the numbers and then do the best they can with the people. But back to your question, I think as a leader, you need to like, I've seen too many examples of where people just abandon their relationships, their families, or whatever in pursuit of
Hmm.
success. And the shame of it is, I see they got their monetary success, but they've, they're they're miserable because there's nobody there. They're on their, you know, X number of marriages. Their kids aren't talking to them. Their health sucks because they're, you know, medicating themselves to, you know, and it's just kind of like, well, I think it, you know, you need to be grounded and be whole and to be, and to me, it starts with your family. And I think, you know, there's no question in my mind. Number one for me is my family. And I'm going to keep them number one. Does that mean like Henny Penny is not there? Does that mean I don't put into other things? No, but I start with feeling this balance in life about my family. And then from there, it's just, you know, caring and respecting people. And again, that doesn't mean like, oh, then you, does that mean you put up with poor performers or whatever? It's like, no, that doesn't, that's, but I'm going to be respectful. And, you know, hopefully we've been able to help people understand whether they're performing or not. And if they can't, where they can get to a place where they can, or maybe can't be here. You know, like not everybody is going to get what I think is kind of the privilege of being here and
Yeah.
doing that. So I do this all the time, Josh. I'm rambling a lot, but I would just say it's
It's okay.
leadership starts at this core of are you in balance? Are you
Yeah.
confident in your life? And then and within that, you know, caring about your people and knowing it you if you think success is only this monetary thing and you go over people, you know, to me that's this other element. How you win is important to me is winning,
Mm.
you know? So, you know, it's like if you win money, but you did it by crawling over people or people don't respect you or you're a jerk
Pyrrhic
to
victory.
family, you know, it's like that's not winning. They'll figure that out
Yeah.
maybe as they're dying. Um, so to me, it was that element of and I think it kind of runs through it all. Then, I mean, you know, if you look at your family, you have a long view on your family. You know, if I,
Yeah.
you know, and with the people you're dealing with, it's like, gosh, having a long view, caring about them, and then supporting them. But then they have to be good and do their part.
Yeah.
So I forget your question.
No, that's all right. No, you answered it. No, I appreciate it. So I guess that kind of leads me into another question. If I were to ask you, Rob, to think about who you were before any of it, before you got into business, maybe even, you know, getting out of high school or in college, if you were to compare that person to the person you are today, what did you have to grow or outgrow to get to where you are?
Yeah, I think I was, you know, really immature, you know, I was not thoughtful. I mean,
Yeah.
I think one of the things just, you know, becoming more intentional, becoming more thoughtful, learning. And but I would say, you know, I was kind of like every other stupid kid, you know, or and getting started and thinking what success, you know, you start thinking about successes that you sold the most or whatever. And then if you're doing a sales team, it's kind of like, oh, you're thinking about how you're going to help sell more versus like, I'm really doing a different job about, and you know, it's not just me selling, like being the super salesperson. If I'm now the sales manager, it's really, you know, am I supporting these people in their what they're doing? Am I holding, do I set the expectations? Am I holding them accountable and whatever? Well, I just learned that over time. So if you look, it's like, I, I really mean it. It was like, oh my gosh, it started just as a mess and probably was, you know, went through every phase that a person does. I think the thing that I really learned and got comfortable with, and then I think it accelerated at Henny Penny was um, just trying to get better and learn from what happened and learn where, you know, from others and seeking feedback. I'm a big believer in, if you look at the highest performing people and organizations, one element, and I think probably the most important element, is that they are seeking feedback, information to get better. They don't think they've figured it all out. And there isn't the arrogancy of like, I figured this out. And they're,
Yeah.
you look at the top athletes, like they're sitting there, working on that's a golfer, like, right, it's like they're looking to say, I want to improve my putting. Well, they don't get stuck on thinking like, was this person think I'm a bad golfer? They're just trying to get better. And I think trying to get better wherever you are is a sign of growth. And to me, I view it this way. And I tell people this. It's like, if you could do one thing, seek feedback during your career
Mm.
and be really thoughtful in how you get feedback. And I use this example. I have lots of stupid examples, but if you went to your grandmother's house to have dinner, she cooked a dinner for you, and she said, "How was it, Josh?" What are you going to say?
It's fantastic.
Great. It
I
was
loved it.
great. Yeah. Uh, and and she might even think she was asking for feedback. It was like, I asked for feedback.
Mhm.
Now, if she did this, what if she said this? Josh, I've been taking a culinary class at the local college. And I was wondering if you might be able to tell me one or two things that might make the dish I did tonight better. What did she do? She gave you permission to help her. And the thing with feedback is, I think you have to do it in a way where you're giving people permission. But the flip side of that is, people who you give feedback to and they melt down. They're just like, what do you think? I'm terrible. You think, they melt
Mhm.
down. You know what happens to those people? Nobody gives them feedback. They
Yeah.
don't want to. It's not worth it. And when you don't get feedback, it's like walking through life without a mirror or anything. You can't learn and grow. And so to me, if you could do one thing as you're growing up and developing and whatever, it's like, just learn to seek feedback. And within it, it doesn't mean you're going to get some where somebody's just being a jerk and they're really messing with you, or some is not valid. But you can probably start to see when there's something happening, and just know you've got a strong defense mechanism that will rationalize anything. Like, well, he doesn't know how, hard it was for me to do X or whatever. So you can talk yourself into dismissing almost all feedback. But I would say the more you can kind of step back, and feedback, it can sting, because you're like, because some of the feedback might be like, I didn't mean for it to come across that way.
Yeah.
And that could be true, but that still doesn't mean it didn't come across that way. And
Yeah.
so for you to really be able to say, I'm going to be an expert on feedback, on how I get it and how I process it. I'm not going to throw it all out. That doesn't mean every feedback I get. I mean, some feedback would be like barking dogs, just like, forget it. And sometimes a manager or a friend is helpful in being able to sort through, like, I'm hearing this. Does this match? And,
Yeah.
a good manager will be able to say, listen, this is not there. This is a good one.
That's really interesting. And as you're talking about that, I'm looking back, right, and connecting dots in my own development, and how much more difficult feedback was to hear when I knew less, which is, I think, it can be
Yes.
a little bit paradoxical,
Yes.
right, if you think about it. Because, but when I knew less, it was a whole lot more difficult for me to take any kind of feedback and decipher how it was delivered and all that kind of stuff. But if I look at today and inviting this feedback, I know more, about what I'm doing, about who I'm doing it for, about the industry, everything like that. However, I am finding myself seeking it more, which is allowing me to grow and learn more. So I think it's incredible to lay it out like that, and a valuable lesson for anybody to take away.
And I think underlying it's almost either a fear or an arrogance. Like,
Mm.
the more it's like, I mean, if you'd sit there and go like, hey, I've got the formula, Josh. This is it,
Uh-huh.
or raising kids. Is there a manual for that? It's like, well, there are people that think like I know the right way. And I would say this, I don't think there's a right way. I think there are people that have used, tough love and it's worked, and some that are unconditional love and it's worked, and all. It becomes kind of situation. Now, there's a wrong way for sure,
Sure.
but there's not like a right way. And the more you get into it, like innovation, oh, I've got that figured out. It sounds ludicrous when you think about
Hmm.
it.
Hmm.
And there's so many topics where it sounds ludicrous if you're like, I've figured it out. And so to me, the best is always like, hey, I want to learn more about that.
Yeah.
There isn't a topic, even the ones I ramble on forever about, that I'm not like, well, I don't think I have it figured out. I'm continually learning, and also people saying, well, like, what about this? I'm like, oh, yeah, that's a good point. Um, So I think there is, and to be open with that, to just have a confidence that I'm not afraid of showing ignorance, because it's like, who knows everything? And if somebody thinks they know everything, I really don't want to spend any time with them because they have no clue.
Yeah. So, in the spirit of, figuring it out and continuous learning, what is it, Rob, that you're still trying to figure out about yourself?
Um, I think it's interesting. I'm at a place with where I feel like I can really positively impact a lot of people, even, my different roles, and just trying to figure out how I can best do that. And, and also, I continue on this is a really special time with the family. And again, they're first, and spend time with the family. What is time that I'm not wanting to, you know, hey, that's fine, but I really don't want to use my time that way. How do I dice up my time and the different things that energize me, and then different stuff where I'll do it, but I'm like, I don't know why I'm really doing that. So I think it's just a matter of trying to continue to learn and grow. And as I'm kind of going through another chapter in my life, this is another chapter. How can I continue to be purposeful and making a difference, and enjoying the family and having those all come together, and they talk about life in thirds or whatever. It's kind of,
Mhm.
and I would just say I'm in the midst of that, and then trying to, again, make sure I'm really letting go. And I think the thing we all fight, whether we know it or not, is ego.
Mm.
And how when you look at a lot of things that are problems in an organization or people or whatever, a lot of it comes down to the ego element of it. And how does your ego drive you, and take you into different places, or have you do things that don't really make sense? And I think, uh, you know, uh, I I want to always kind of try to tame that element and make sure I'm not, that's not a problem, because I think it can be a problem for a lot of people.
Yeah. Probably, I would venture to say all people at some point, right? I mean,
Yes,
you kind of one
we're a human
ego
being.
in my eyes, right? It's kind of one of those things that there's the only way out is through, right?
Yes,
You kind of have to experience it in order to overcome it, and it's always going to be a part of you.
yeah.
It's just a matter of does that part control you, right?
And I think it's kind of goes to that last area of where I'm continually trying to stay, and that's just this trying to get a deeper and deeper self awareness.
Mm.
Just to kind of, the more you can kind of step back and see where it's like, oh, was my ego driving that? Was that the right place? Is that influencing how I'm thinking about things? Because I love to problem solve. I love to think about things and think about how to make them better or whatever, and to see like we say, the chessboard or whatever. But when I see the chessboard, am I sometimes, people can get influenced by things that might be more impactful to them than really is, like, what's that have to do with the chessboard? And
Yeah.
just, I'm not saying like, God, this is a huge, it's just a part of all of us. And to me, it's like, it's kind of we all can get into deep self deception on lots of different things. Being defensive, being about ourselves, how we see things or whatever. And it's just kind of that ongoing trying to tame that and look at that and make sure it's not warping your perspective, your actions, for whatever it is.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. So, in the spirit of kind of ego and things like that, can you share a time or memory you have of failing and how you overcame that failure? And if not a specific example, then maybe just talk about it.
Well, I'm trying to think. I mean, I think my life is littered with failures. I really, there's so many that I would say
Yeah.
have kind of done everything that you can do that would have been, yeah, that
And
I,
how about this? How do you
yeah.
view failure?
Well, there's, I don't like it. It depends on how it is. If I failed in the way in which I, um, managed a particular situation with a person 20 years ago, I feel bad about that. But what I did was I didn't then just not, I decided I learned from that and I'm not going to do that again. And I just continued to kind of build. Now, a lot of times you'd sit there and go like, oh my gosh, you have to learn every way by bumping your head. And I'd say, well, no, but if you think about it, I could tell you stuff that you could say, that you're just going to have to experience. You can tell somebody in eighth grade that it's going to be fine. And, you'll be over this. And these things that you think are great big won't be anything. You won't even remember them in 5 years. But when you're in eighth grade, you can't just, transmit this wisdom and experience because you're going to have to experience that. And I only say that in that, certainly I read and I see others and I don't have to always just bump my head or put my hand on the stove to do it. But I would say a lot of our learnings is one of that. And to me, it's like, then I just really, because I didn't like the outcome or whatever, that I just decided I was going to not do it again or learn from that and say, why did that happen? What did I do? Why did I think that way? Why did I, just, blame them? Was it really, a lot of times it'd be like, was that really me?
Mm,
Versus
mm,
them? Like what's my role in this?
yeah.
And so I think that just led me to this ongoing evolution that's hard to say like it was this one thing or this other thing, because to me it was like I did so many bonehead things and just tried to learn.
I'm right there with you, man. No, I appreciate that, and that's kind of what I was hoping to get your insight on is just around failure, how you can use that to make yourself better, which you answered. I appreciate that. I just have a few more questions for you, and then we'll move
Sure.
to close. Um, I am curious. This is something that I'm always intrigued by when speaking to people. But Rob, what keeps you up at night? I mean, what do you if there's something that turns your gears specifically and that you think about incessantly and that you're maybe even obsessed with or devoted to, like what keeps you up at night?
um I'm generally pretty good. sleeping, but figuratively, kind of what are things that,
Sure.
I would say this, it's like anything, I would say what's true about us, just people, is we will always have problems to solve. Sometimes they're big ones. If there's no problem, yeah, it's almost like, you know, if you'd sit there and say, like, say in your business, it'd be like, gosh, it'd be great when I just get things smoothly running. It's like, well, Josh, you're never going to be there. And because it's dynamic and things happen and you evolve and you change, and it'd be like, well, gosh, we were through the pandemic. Why is it not better? And it's like, well, here's the reality: we will find things. So if everything is smooth, you will find things that you need to work on or problems. There might have been small problems in comparison to the pandemic or dealing with tariffs or dealing with service or trying to hire people or whatever, but we'll always have these problems. So to me, it's kind of like funny when it's like, I just can't wait till I've solved it all. And it's like, you're never going to
Yeah.
solve it all. We as a people will always. And so, what are things that, they come back to as far as like, okay, what are real things that I'm dealing with now? Well, like I've mentioned, I'm trying to walk this line of helping and supporting Kevin and not getting in his way. Do I think about that a lot? Do I talk to him about it? Yeah. Is that something on my mind? Yeah. Does it keep me up at night? Well, I try right now, when I run and do things, that I'm mostly able to sleep at night. Like my brain doesn't start at 3 in the morning, just go. That's something situational and big when something like that has happened, and they
Sure.
do. But I'll have those things that I'm thinking about with Henny Penny, or there might be some big issues. I'm working on a nonprofit and thinking about some of the things. And again, these are more like I'm thinking a lot about them, whether or not I categorize them as thinking about them in the middle of the night, something different.
Sure.
But I would say also my daughter, who is pregnant. We were with her like 4 weeks ago for their first ultrasound, and at the end they said, "We need you to talk to a doctor like right now." And we're like, and we went down, and they said, we saw something that we're really concerned about, and it could be everything from it's totally fine to not viable, and we're like, Jesus criminy. And we did not know for 2 weeks anything
Whoa.
or the odds of that. And they came back 2 weeks later and said, everything is great. It's perfect. So for 2 weeks, can I tell you, I was thinking about that at night. Absolutely. And just praying for her and her baby and her husband, and just, so, we all have things that will do it. Now, so I guess my point is I think they're an ongoing series of things that I would say rise to a level of attention to me that I'm working through. But I try through my just trying to be balanced and running and whatever, that I'm able to sleep generally without it interrupting my
Okay.
sleep.
All right. No, I appreciate the transparency. And I really like what you said at the end there, that it's the things that rise to your level of attention. I think that's really the takeaway for
Yeah.
people is this kind of stuff will ebb and flow throughout life, right? Kind of goes back to what you said about problems. We're always going to have problems.
Yes.
Um, so no, that's great. All right, last question I have for you, Rob,
Yeah.
and then we'll wrap it up here for our audience. But if you could give one piece of advice to the listeners of this show that impacts how they lead others and they lead themselves, how they lead others and how they lead themselves, what would that advice be?
Um, I think, because again, it's, I understand the question of one. It it kind of reminds me of the, when somebody says like, is it culture or strategy? That,
Mm.
it's like, which one is it? And I kind of reject the question because I almost look at it as like, well, Josh, if you had one thing, would you like food or water or air? You can only have one. And it'd be like, well, you can't make it without one. So I think it's hard to kind of say, well, the one thing, but I do believe this at just a base level, it would be care, care about yourself, care about your family, care about your people, care about your business. Do you care? Do you really feel it? You know, I use the example for somebody who does all the right things, but then they're puzzled. It's like if somebody was struggling with their girlfriend or their wife, and then, I said, hey, why don't you get them some flowers and write them a note or something, and then they come back and they say, well, it didn't work. And, my thought is like, well, do you think they thought you actually meant it?
Hmm.
Did you really care? Were you doing it just because you're doing it? Like you heard to do it, but people can tell if you care,
Yeah.
and so when I would say just caring about and caring about like the business, do you care about your business? Because if you care about it, it's like, then you're going to do the right things for the business. And if you care about people, you'll do the right thing for your people. And if you care about your family, you'll do the right thing. So I think if you could, just have a foundation of caring, it will probably lead you to the right place.
I love that answer. I really appreciate that. Before I say the final goodbye, what if somebody wanted to learn more about Henny Penny or about you or anything like that? Where can they find you?
So I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm I only reluctantly on I would say I filter ones where I know their entire thing was to sell me something, and
Yeah.
I'm just on a spam list or whatever. But I'm on LinkedIn, and I really just maybe mention heard me here or whatever. And I'm open to it. I'm just trying to, that would be one way. People can email me. I'm happy to get email. It's rconnelly@hennypenny.com. Those would probably be the best ways to connect with me.
Okay. Awesome. Well, Rob, I can't thank you enough for spending your valuable time, with me today, with our audience today. That's the one thing we can never get back. So, I reject the term "lend me your time." I don't like that
Yes.
phrase. You gave me and our audience your time, and I truly appreciate it. I learned a ton, and I know they will too. So, thank you so much.